Story 1. A few weeks ago, I finally bought a new car. Nothing too flashy, but it's a big deal for me because I've been saving up for a while. Got lucky from a slot win on stake of $9,000. Anyway, I was feeling good about it. One morning, I was driving to work and saw my neighbor walking down the street. We're friendly but not super close, and I figured I'd be nice. So I pulled over and asked if he needed a lift. He happily accepted, and during the ride, we realized we work fairly close to each other. No big deal, right? Well, apparently, that one ride turned into an unspoken agreement. The next day, I saw him standing at the same spot, clearly waiting for me. I thought, all right, whatever, I'll give him another ride. But now it's been every single day since then. Rain or shine, he's there. No text, no asking, just standing there waiting. At first, I didn't mind too much, but now it's getting on my nerves. Some mornings, I just want to listen to music, zone out, or even stop for coffee without worrying about someone else's schedule. I even tried leaving earlier once, thinking he'd get the hint, but nope. Next day, he mentioned how he must have missed me. I don't want to be a jerk, but I never agreed to be his personal chauffeur. I was just trying to be nice once. Now I feel awkward bringing it up because I don't want to cause any weird tension with a neighbor. Would I be the bad guy if I just started running late or having meetings in the morning? Or should I straight up tell him I don't want to give him rides every day? Story 2. When I, 23, was a kid, my parents, mom and stepdad, were good friends with a couple, Karen and a nice dad. They had 3 older kids around my brother's ages, and one younger one who was the baby, male. After they moved away, there was an annual friends BBQ, and few birthday holidays spent together. There has been some drama around Karen, like one day a super good friend stopped coming to the kids' birthday parties and Karen began to insult her every time we would ask why she wasn't invited anymore. Oh, that insert slur isn't welcome anymore because she is just another slur. It happened again another time, and my mom could never, and still cannot, give us a valid reason. Their youngest kid was always mama's baby. She would make a drama of every tantrum. The kid would have nightmares and cry, and she would freak out and film him to show us afterward how scary and stressful her life was. They even once gave the kid his brother's room and furnished it from zero because he didn't sleep well in his other room, and he needed some change. Now on to the story. The kid is 10 at the time, his brother is 20. My stepdad has kids aged 7, 12, and my brothers are 20 and 13. The two families decided to rent a cabin for 10 days around Christmas. Everyone arrives at the house and days 1-2 are doing okay. Karen complains that there is too much walking and her precious baby is tired. My mom and new partner were understanding. Not every kid is trained for long walks. But after a few days, we notice everything is about her kid. Karen is cleaning after him. Everyone has to be on his meal sleeping schedule. She is all over him and over us because of the noise or any disturbance. As the kid starts to eat snacks outside of the mealtime, my parents ask them all to put the dishes in the washer after it, as we are used to. Everyone agrees, but the kid never does it. The kids remind him gently, and it works for a time, but every time Karen is around, she starts yelling at the kid who dared criticizing her baby and does it herself. At that stage, the house became tense, and my parents felt Karen getting weird about it. Karen starts to lock herself in her bedroom, be even more controlling of her kid, and berate everyone who dares say anything negative to the kid, even if it's the 7 years who ask him for his toy back. When finally Karen lost her mind day 3 before dinner, my older brother, who was 20 at the time, said, "Kiddos, who's the dummy who still forgot his bowl full of milk in the sink?" It's okay, but kids, please think about it from now on. Do as you do at home, my mom tells us. How dare you speak about my baby like that? He is my kid. He doesn't have to do anything. I'm doing it for him. Karen then yells at my brother. It's okay. We are trying to teach them to clean after themselves, mom tells her. No, I don't know what you are trying to do, but my baby isn't doing any of it. Your kids aren't your slaves. I'm treating mine good. Okay, honey, maybe we will figure things out later. Calm down. Her husband tells her, "No, I will not. They are trying to force my baby to clean for everyone. He doesn't have to do anything." One of Karen's older kids, 20, tries to calm her down too when she freaks out and says, "You know what? I hate you all and I never wanted to be there. I want to leave." She locked herself in her room, and as her husband tried to make her calm down, she yelled, "I'm taking my baby home and I'm asking for a divorce." She then left alone with a kid and came back, and then forced her other kids and husband to leave too, and kept telling my parents they were terrible parents and so on. That's the last time we saw her. I know from the kids that 5 years later, she is still very much with her husband. Her mental state isn't the great, but mostly now, she is telling anyone that her kid is doing terrible at school, while the kid is actually doing fine according to his brothers, and that life as a mother is so stressful and terrible for her. Story 3. About 10 years ago now, I was working for a small data center in my town. I originally started there as a tech support operator and did call center work, helping various small companies over the phone with basic computer issues. I wasn't over the moon about it, but I also didn't hate it. However, when one of our major clients backed out of their contract due to budget cuts on their end, my company scrambled into a reorg and tried to keep as many employees as possible, hoping to win that client back. During that reorg, I got shifted over to physical security. I took over the role of 2 individuals, while they did a lateral move. My new role had me running the daily ins and outs of the data center and its security, while they were supposed to make improvements. Of course, I had never done this type of job before, but I took to it pretty quickly. It also didn't take me long to realize that one of the individuals that I replaced, Ted, wasn't quite up to snuff like he thought he was. Ted's biggest enemy was the cameras. He constantly struggled with them. He couldn't ever figure out why they weren't saving the footage the way he thought that they should be. He would bemoan about how he had a camera set up and working the way he wanted it to, only to have it stop saving the files properly a few weeks later. He also rarely let me help and take a look at the configurations of the cameras because I don't need to know how to adjust them, just how to watch them. One day, though, he was struggling with a camera that a client was paying for. They wanted a camera on their servers to make sure that only their team worked on their servers. I always thought it was a bit of paranoia since each server rack had a lock and key and even security didn't have spares. But it made the client happy and the company was making money off it, so whatever. Anyways, Ted was panicked because he couldn't get the cameras to save properly and he didn't know what to do. He eventually gave up and put a call in to the camera manufacturer, Cisco, to try and get them to assist. In his frustration, he left the camera configuration open, and I decided to take a crack at it. I have a technical background and camera systems aren't really all that different from any other program I have to troubleshoot on the spot. So I wrote down all the original configuration information and made sure I documented any changes I made. Eventually, I figured out why Ted couldn't grasp the camera issue. Ted never understood that all the cameras save all their data to a single server and the server was full, and looking at just this camera configuration I could tell why. He had the camera recording and saving all its footage for 24 HRS a day in HD. Plus, he wanted this to keep 90 days worth of footage. In case you don't know much about camera or video footage, that's a lot of storage space you'll need. That doesn't include all the other cameras that were probably also set to similar settings. But the software never errored out saying it wouldn't be able to save that much storage. It would just let you make all your changes, and then at the bottom of the screen say something similar to estimated archiving max allowance. 2 days, meaning the server only had enough space to save 2 days worth of footage with that configuration. However, Ted must have never seen that or never knew what it meant. Realizing the issue, I proceeded to make the correct changes, setting the camera to record only on movement, turning it down off HD, and increasing the footage priority, meaning it wouldn't be the first to be overwritten if the server ran out of space again. After making the changes, the dialogue said something closer to estimated archiving max allowance, 100 days. I smiled and quickly called Ted up to let him know what the issue was and how I fixed it. However, instead of a grateful Ted I got "Hey Ted, I fixed the camera issue. See what's going on is that..." I was cut off. "What camera issue?" "Oh, that client camera that you struggled with earlier. I think you said you couldn't get it to save for 90 days. "What? Why did you touch that? You're making us breach the contract." "But it's already broken. We are already breaching the contract." "No, I have a ticket with Cisco. They will fix the issue. Put it back immediately." "Okay, but can I at least explain what I learned?" "No, just put the camera back to the original setting I had it at. Let the experts figure it out." "But I figured it out." "Just put it back, and stop changing the configs. If I learn you're the reason we are having camera problems, I'll make sure Linda knows about it." Linda was my boss's boss. "Okay, fine." I sighed and hung up, putting the camera back to its broken configuration. Of course, Cisco never called back, and Ted forgot about the issue, and now he was plagued with even more camera problems because the rest of the cameras weren't saving their footage either. For the next 2 weeks, whenever Ted walked into the security office and had a problem with a camera, I would try and explain the issue, only to be huffed away and asked to go stand in front of that camera so I can see if it will pick up your motion. In his eyes, he essentially demoted from physical security lead to motion detection officer. Eventually, I gave up, and amongst other various issues I had between him and management, I started to look for a new job. Now, it's my second to last day at work, and about 3 months since that day when I performed my malicious compliance. I have my replacement working at my desk, handling all the tasks that need to be done, and I'm just sitting in a corner reading a book. That's when Ted walks into the security office. His face is red, and he's huffing angrily. He goes to the wall of monitors and pulls up that same camera and then clicks furiously around on the screen, while getting angrier and angrier with each passing click. I decided to see what the issue was, and wouldn't you know it, he's fiddling around in the archive section. Oh, that camera isn't saving any footage for more than an hour. I couldn't help but smile. I tried to cover it with my book, but Ted glanced up at the wrong time and started going off. "What are you smiling about?" "Nothing. I can see you're busy." Unfortunately, I couldn't help but let out a sneer of pleasure. Ted jumps up and walks directly over to me, then proceeds to try and drill sergeant me. "What are you laughing at?" Now here's the thing, I've never been in the military, but I have had the drill sergeant routine placed on me a million times in my life. I'm not scared by it anymore. Plus, I'm sitting down, so the effect isn't working properly. Thus, the laughter now spills out of me. "That's the camera I had fixed for you. But you got all pissy about it and told me Cisco would fix it. Guess you didn't follow up on the ticket." "Oh, so glad you think this is funny, but you don't have to go tell the client that we don't have any of their footage they are looking for." "Nope, you're right, I don't." I spin around in my chair and then land one more tiny sucker punch. "But I mean, if you're too scared to do it, I can. The worst the client can do is request I be fired, and whoops, what do you know? I've already done that for them." Ted huffs at me, draws his fist up ever so slightly, and then finally turns away, storming out of the office. The aftermath. The client never cared about the footage. They just let it drop. My replacement for my position, however, wasn't so easily cowed by Ted as I was. Also, my replacement had an in with someone much higher up in the food chain than I did. Ted only lasted another 6 months at the company before someone finally realized that he wasn't up to par. Story 4. Hello, everyone. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about how fake these entitled parent stories sound. To some extent, they're right. The title of my story would definitely seem unbelievable to many. I don't have any proof of what happened, but I hope you'll take my word for it and enjoy the story. A short summary is at the bottom. I've definitely lived a wild life with some interesting friends, enemies, and my fair share of frustrating individuals. I live in a medium-sized city with a population of about 40,000 people, and much of the surrounding area is rural. I was about 9 years old when this incident, what I now call the Great Shove, took place. There's a bridge that connects two very popular hiking trails, stretching over a wide river. Despite its length and width, the river is only about 15 feet deep at its deepest point. The trail is always packed from early summer to late fall since the bridge is the only way to access the other trail without swimming across the river. My dad, my younger brother, and I were crossing the bridge to reach the other side when my dad suggested we stop to take some photos of the mountain view. My brother, who was about 7 at the time, small and skinny, was doing that classic kid thing where they lift themselves up above the railing with their hands and just hold that position. He was enjoying the scenery when, out of nowhere, this extremely large woman came waddling up to us. She didn't have the stereotypical, "let me speak to your manager" haircut, but her head was shaved, and the stubble was dyed red. She had one of those baby carriers strapped to her chest, with an infant inside. This woman stopped right behind my brother, muttered, "You're not setting a good example for my daughter," and then promptly shoved him off the bridge. In retrospect, she probably just eased him off, but my memory is a little hazy from that part. Naturally, my dad, I, and everyone else crossing the bridge were in complete shock. I saw someone immediately dial emergency services while my dad started yelling at the woman. I was bawling, looking over the edge of the bridge, and I saw that my brother had surfaced. The drop was about 25 feet, and there was no way he had landed on his feet after tumbling off. A bunch of people started shouting at him to swim to the shore, but he was too busy screaming and crying to listen. I turned back to my dad and saw that the woman was matching his level of anger, yelling just as loudly. All I could hear from her were things like, "I didn't want your son to be a bad influence on my daughter. What if she tried to do something like that?" My dad was furious. "I don't care about your daughter. Why on earth did you just push my son off a bridge?" About 10 minutes later, a police car arrived at the scene. The trail was wide enough for vehicles, but it still took some time for them to get there. By then, my dad had already dashed off to find my brother, and a group of hikers had gathered around the woman, yelling at her to prevent her from escaping. Not that she could move very fast, but she was clearly trying to leave. Somehow, through all of this, the baby strapped to her chest remained completely calm. As soon as the officers got out of the car, they immediately locked eyes on her, as if they had some kind of built-in radar for this kind of situation. One of the officers started to speak, but before he could get a full sentence out, the woman suddenly turned and tackled him. She clawed at his face, screaming like a wild animal. The other officer, along with several hikers, rushed in to pull her off, not just because she was attacking a cop, but because she had practically slammed down on top of him while still carrying a baby on her chest. As they struggled to restrain her, the strap holding the baby must have broken because someone quickly scooped up the child to get them to safety. The second officer wasted no time in drawing her weapon and firing a shot into the woman's shoulder. The scream that followed was so loud I thought my ears were going to burst. After shrieking at the top of her lungs, she finally lost consciousness. The officers immediately secured her and transported her to an ambulance that was waiting by the squad car. Meanwhile, a paramedic took the crying baby from the hiker who had rescued them and carried the child away. I was still sobbing when my dad finally reappeared about 25 minutes later, holding my soaking wet little brother. He was shaken but physically unharmed. The police had a long list of questions for us, and since my dad had been away searching for my brother, I had to answer most of them even though I was only 9 years old. That slowed things down quite a bit. My brother recovered physically, but was deeply traumatized. 6 months later, he was officially diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. It took time, but we slowly began to heal from what happened. 2 weeks after the incident, we received a letter from the police department. It stated that the woman had serious, undiagnosed mental health conditions. They believed she saw my brother as a threat to her child rather than, as she had claimed, a bad influence. Even knowing that, I still can't forgive her for what she did to my sweet little brother. This happened back in early 2013, and she is still serving her 7-year prison sentence for attempted manslaughter, child endangerment, and assault. I also heard that she has been attending rehabilitation sessions. I hope she can come to her senses one day. Thank you for sticking with me through this whole story. Story 5. Backstory. At the time of this story, I was 19 and lived in a house with my 5 siblings, my parents, grandparents, uncle, and his twin sons. My siblings and I shared a room. My parents had a room and my grandparents had the back room. My uncle and his kids lived in the backyard in a tent. The reason they lived in the backyard is because my uncle used to treat my parents like it was his house and would criticize how we would clean. When my parents told him that it was their house and not his, he bought a tent and refused to come back in. My siblings and I do not get along with our uncle because he had always disrespected us and called us names. His kids were no better. They would constantly be telling us that we need to stop doing boy things. My siblings and I would also have to keep all of our valuables close because our cousins were known thieves. At this time, I had been experimenting with special effects makeup and liquid latex. This story is 3 days before Halloween and on Halloween. Characters: me, 4 siblings, cousin 1, cousin 2, Uncle Garrett, and Dad. Dad. Story time. I had just started working on a makeup look in my bedroom when cousin 1 walked in on his phone looking around. I ignored him and hoped he'd walk away and just leave me alone without any confrontation. Of course, that was too much to ask. After hanging up the phone, he walked up to me and just stared. Cousin 1. Hey, no boy will ever want you if you keep wearing makeup and dressing like that. I just nodded without looking up from my mirror. I knew he hated it when he couldn't get a rise out of me, but I didn't want to give him that satisfaction. Hey, I'm talking to you. I'll tell your dad that you're being rude to me and you'll get in trouble. See, I knew he was lying. He wasn't supposed to be in my room when nobody was home. If my dad knew that he was in the room, the boys and my uncle would be locked out of the house. He then started to slap my mirror while I was doing my contour. At this point, I was getting really angry and irritated. I decided to finally answer him. What do you want? Quit ignoring me. No man wants a girl so obsessed with her makeup. You need to get rid of it. He walked up to my desk and started grabbing my stuff. I didn't use most because they were colors I didn't like to use, but then he grabbed all of my eyeliners. I got up and grabbed the makeup out of his hands and put it back where it belonged. No, I don't think so. Leave my stuff alone. Get out of my room. I wear makeup because I like it. You're ugly with or without it anyways. No one will ever like you. You trash. You don't even have talent. Your makeup looks bad, he hissed out with a smile. With that, I felt my ears get hot and I pushed him out of the room. If I had a door, I would have slammed it. I'll admit, I may have pushed him a little bit rougher than I meant to, but I was angry. I always got comments about my makeup because I have a more alternative style and liked bold colors. I told my sisters about everything that had happened, and they just told me that he was a jerk, and they all loved my makeup. They all also had asked me if I was still willing to do their makeup for their Halloween costumes. Of course I said yes. Halloween arrived, and I began doing the girls' makeup, while my cousins sat and watched. 2 of them asked for lots of liquid latex and fake blood. Seeing as how they were doing as zombies, it was perfect. Of course, they'd want to be something that a boy should be. I bet that's why you cut your hair. Commented cousin 2, making cousin 1 laugh out loud, and my sisters look sad. I saw my sisters start to pick at the liquid latex and were trying to get it off. Hey girls, don't forget that y'all are gonna be the scariest looking zombies ever. Y'all better act like it. Tell you what, you can take 2 of my black shirts and tear them up for your costume. Sounds good? When I mentioned my black t-shirts, they got really happy and ran to my closet. I turned my head immediately towards my cousins and just snapped. You guys have no business talking to my sisters like that. Do it again, and I'm going to kick you both where it hurts. Before they could say anything, my sisters ran back in with some shirts and scissors. While they were tearing up the shirts, I started on my youngest sibling, who asked me to make her a rainbow skeleton. The cousins were silent while I did her face. Hopefully they'd be silent throughout the rest of the faces. The last sibling asked me to do a Guy Fawkes mask. She had always loved V for Vendetta, so we decided to watch the movie while I did her face. I keep looking at the cousins and only catch their evil eyes. As I was finishing the last one, cousin 1 comes up to the seat and sits down on the chair I used for the girls. I looked at him just sitting in the chair and started packing my stuff up. He looked confused and tried to grab my arm. "What are you doing? Make me look like Darth Maul." He sounded angry. "Why should I do your face? You didn't even ask me to do your face." I continued packing and was walking away. "Just do it. You have all that stuff out." He sounded like a little kid that couldn't have another cookie. My cousins both came up to me and they began to berate me about how I'm such a witch and should just do it anyway because I'd be getting experience. "We shouldn't even have to ask you. You should just do it. Quit being such a witch. We are telling our dad." They finally just walked away and I went into the bathroom to make myself look like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. It took about an hour to finish, and when I came out, they were standing in the living room watching TV with my uncle. Uncle Garrett came up to me and started yelling about how I've always been so ungrateful and don't deserve anything. "My sons are so upset that you won't do their faces, and you've ruined Halloween for them. You're lucky you're not my kid or else I would be beating you black and blue." He was still screaming at me when my parents came into the house. "What is going on here? Why are you yelling at my daughter like that? Baby, are you okay?" I didn't even realize I was crying until my dad asked me that. "That little witch won't do their faces. She said she would. If she was my daughter, Uncle Garrett got cut off by my dad's angry yelling voice. "She isn't your daughter. You have no right to be yelling at her like that. I've been lenient on you because you're my brother-in-law. But this is it. Pack your stuff and leave. You have until tomorrow morning to be out of here." Dad didn't bother listening to Garrett's protests and started walking away. I looked at my cousins through my tears and was happy to see that they were upset. I should mention that the paint is what really made me tear up. It's water activated. So when I started crying and wiping my eyes, it got in my eyes and made the rest of the makeup run. My dad told me to fix my makeup and to go outside to trick or treat when I was done. I did as I was told and had a blast. When we got home, my uncle and his kids were gone. They spent months at my uncle's baby mama's house. Then she kicked them out because she found out he cheated on her. Last I heard from them, the boys were taken into CPS and my uncle was in jail because of him not having a house, job, or a way to support them. I don't know the details, but if I did, I'd let you guys know. Story 6. Hi all, back again with a dog park story featuring a nice heartwarming dose of malicious compliance. Not sure how many folks have dogs, specifically male dogs, but for anyone who doesn't, pro tip: anything upright and stationary can and will be peed on. Fire hydrants, of course. Signs? Absolutely. Plants? You bet. Innocent bystanders who haven't moved recently? Oops. I swear that's only happened twice. One fine day about 2 years or so ago, my pupper and I were at the dog park, doing dog park things. I throw the ball, he chases it down. Sometimes he'll bring it back, sometimes he'll leave it in random places. Sometimes he'll bring it to a random stranger in the park and look at them like they're soft until they figure out he wants them to throw the ball. The entire time this is happening, the whole park is getting all the P-mails replied to, one spritz at a time. This particular time we had the entire dog park to ourselves for a little while, and these two ladies came in with super cute beagle puppies. One woman sensibly didn't bring a bag with her into the park. She had pockets, and the other lady had a very big purse that looked like it cost about as much as a used car. This was the kind where she'll get scoliosis from carrying the thing around, but it's large enough to fit actual kitchen appliances. So these two ladies are standing there talking to each other and monitoring their puppies, which is good. I've more or less dissolved into a puddle of awa, and my dog makes friends because at that time in his life, he'd still play with other dogs. Then I notice the woman with the bag has put her bag on the ground. which is a thing you do when you've probably got a car battery crammed in there with all the other stuff ladies need to carry when they're not permitted pockets by the cruel people of fashion. I notice this and figure she's new. Once I've recollected myself from puddle form, I wait for an opportune moment and toss out an, "Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know that having your bag on the ground is a bad idea at the dog park. I've seen others hang it on the chain link fence." And I point at the fence that encloses the dog park. Not like there weren't over 9,000 available hangers for her bag. They both looked at me in mild shock. Apparently they hadn't noticed me gushing all over their cute puppies. Then they cotton on to what I'm saying, and the sensible lady looks at her friend and rolls her eyes, while the bag lady comes back with, "Oh, I'll just hold on to it," and picks up Bagzilla and slings it back over her shoulder. I shrug and buzz off, which was not a stated request, but was implied. Within 5 minutes, the doom bag is back on the ground and I meander over, because I see my dog go into target lock mode. The stream is imminent. I attempt to give the woman a heads up and make it as far as, Bag lady looks at me and just snaps. "Leave it, it'll be fine." I give her a shrug and mosey over to somewhere clear of the blast radius. Not only does my dog have a target lock, he's also parked himself uphill from the bag's impact crater. His leg lifts, and it's no spritz going into, not onto, the bag. It's a full stream. Realizing the most likely reaction from bag lady is a designer boot to somewhere, I shout, "Dexter, no," at max volume, and get the desired result. He looks at me, and then doesn't escape and evades because he's a jerk like that sometimes. Both women look at me, then at the dog, and then at the bag. Sensible lady is fighting back tears, while bag lady works herself up into a frenzy. How dare my filthy animal urinate on her valuable stuff? Don't I have him trained? Blah, blah, blah. She scruffs her puppy and holds him in her arms while maintaining a constant stream of castigation at me. It was honestly kind of impressive. Keeps shouting at me all the way over to her car, throws the puppy in, hope he's okay, and burns rubber leaving the park. Other lady bursts out laughing once the car is out of line of sight. She wheezes, "At least you tried."